Pulse wasn't just a nightclub. It was a place where people could come to feel welcome. It didn't matter who you were, who you wanted to be. You felt loved. This is what Pulse is now.
It was really important to me that people learned not only the story of what happened at Pulse that night, but also what you can do differently in your life to change the future, how we can become a better society, a better human race. That's why I began the foundation.
We are building a national memorial museum. It's part of our country's history, and it's our responsibility to see to it that this story and that the 49 are never forgotten. These museums and memorials aren't built for years. They're built for centuries. And what we're doing is more than just a memorial museum.
I hope that the memorial will bring people together from all walks of life, but I also hope that it can be a place of love.
As a family member, I said, I hope they turn this place into a museum.
The memorial is where you go to grieve, but the museum is where you go to learn.
I want people to come visit so they can take what happened here and pass it on.
I'm really excited about the educational opportunity of the museum and the wonderful things that the One Pulse Foundation is working on to build a stronger global community.
Well, my hope is that when they walk out, they've learned not only what happened on June 12th, but how to be a better human, that they will be able to spread the message that we will not let hate win. They will leave equipped how to do that.
The Intro Memorial now is built and it's amazing.
The pictures that are on the barrier wall are of love and support and unity, but mostly you'll see a community, a global community.
This is a magical place. It's always a rainbow, or you'll see a cloud look like an angel. It's peaceful.
People ask if they should come to the memorial. I always recommend it.
It is so welcoming.
There are so many stories.
You can't help but feel the impact.
I think everyone should see this.
You'll be so happy that you did.
It gives you a lot of energy of how to go forward.
And it's a really beautiful cathartic experience.
We have over 300 people a day that visit, and people are coming from around the world. We have seen bands of children pull up to learn the story of what happened on this site.
And they're teaching kids that there's no difference between one another person. You always should love.
We found it really important that our angels were not just a name on a wall. And that's why we developed our scholarship program. We had 49 individual scholarships, each in the name of one of our angels, designated by their family members as a way to make sure that their stories lived on forever.
After visiting the memorial, we want people to feel like they're changed for the better, that they want to get involved because the goal is really to stop hate.
There are just so many ways that people can engage with the foundation, volunteering at our offices, helping us with our events, even just being a guide on site. It's an easy, simple way to be part of the solution.
Being a volunteer for the One Pulse Foundation, it's a life-changing experience.
Come out, check it out, and get involved. Go to the One Pulse Foundation website.
Right now, more than anything, funding is crucial.
Donate to the One Pulse Foundation to help us build the memorial site to honor all of them, to keep the memories going forever.
The story needs to be told over and over again.
Everybody's human. Treat everybody equally.
Love still wins, and the message is still alive and well.
It's going to change your life.
We will not let hate win.
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 Nosotros no dejaremos que el odio gane.
We will not let hate win.
We will not let hate win.
We will not let hate win.
Love is love, and we will not let hate win.
Pulse nightclub in Orlando was not just a place where people could be free to be themselves, but a place to find community and safety. To know that the essence of Pulse was shattered by a mass shooting and terrorist attack in our country remains just as unimaginable today as it was that night, June 12, 2016. The National Pulse Memorial and Museum is intended to preserve the heart of Pulse, a place where everyone was welcomed and loved. The memorial would be designed as a place to grieve, to honor lives taken and saved, as well as serve as a place to heal and learn. The museum will serve as a community space to tell the history of safe spaces, the tragedy of June 12, 2016, and the response and support of the world. I hope you'll join me in supporting the One Pulse Foundation and help build the National Pulse Memorial and Museum so that we never forget what happened to those precious lives that were taken. We won't let hate win.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Earl Mawat, Vice President of Education for One Pulse Foundation. Our mission is to create and support a memorial that opens hearts, a museum that opens minds, educational programs that open eyes, and legacy scholarships that open doors. To date, we have awarded more than 900,000 scholarships to undergraduate and graduate students. They are carrying on the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of our 49 angels. And to our friends joining us for the very first time, I'd like to welcome you to our conversation starter. And for returning friends, I'd like to welcome you back and thank you for your support. We want to also thank the following sponsors for their support in making these presentations happen. We thank J.P. Morgan Chase & Company, Orlando Utilities Commission, City Furniture, and Northrop Grumman. We thank them for making these programs available to the audience. These film screenings and panel discussions are intended to spark conversation on topical issues that often fall below the social radar. Last month's screening was a short film, Ghost, that looked at the negative effects of ghosting culture. And the emotional effects was intimately told from a one-person perspective. We learned from the filmmaker, lead actor, and expert panelists the emotional toll of ghosting on individuals impacted by the phenomenon. We're thrilled to partner nationally with amazing writers, directors, and producers to showcase their important work and to have that discussion afterwards. So we're about to get things started, but before we do, please note that parental discretion is strongly advised for some adult themes. And now, I'm truly excited to present to you tonight the extraordinary film, Love Is All You Need, by filmmaker Rocco-Shields. Love Is All You Need looks at the world through a lens where LGBTQ is the norm and straight is considered unacceptable. It's my absolute pleasure this time to introduce you all to Love Is All You Need filmmaker Rocco-Shields for her welcome and opening comments. And before I go, be sure to stay connected after the film for the panel discussion featuring the filmmaker and other guest panelists. So please, help me welcome Rocco-Shields. Thank you.
And cut. Very nice. Let's move on. My mission as a filmmaker is not just to create work. It's to create a body of work that will create social change. This film is a way for mainstream America to understand the plight of those that have been bullied and those that have been discriminated against. Maybe if the world was reversed, they would understand why the world is the way it is today.
There is an uproar tonight about this video.
That movie had nothing to do with bullying.
It was so overwhelming that it caused him to lose consciousness.
We're creating a culture that endorses sodomy.
I've had letters. I've had kids write me wanting to adapt plays about it. I've had people that are 65 years old telling me for the first time that it allowed them to see what it would be like on the other side and that it changed them. Love Is All You Need is not just a movie, it's a movement.
He's gonna be here with an exclusive look.
We're on set of the controversial film Love Is All You Need, based on the YouTube viral hit of the same name.
My purpose is to make this film because there's nothing I believe in more than its power and its ability to change the world.
The short film and Rocco's work has had quite an impact on the country and internationally.
Everyone wants change. Everyone wonders why the world isn't changing fast enough. But if every single person could be inspired to create change, the world would think differently. Thank you.
Some people say that they are born the way they are destined to be.
Karen, it is a beautiful, healthy baby girl.
Some people say that it's a result of how you were raised.
That's it, good girl. You're so good. Oh, mommy's home.
Problem with that theory is that I had the best, most normal parents anyone could have asked for.
Good. She let me sleep today. She let me sleep for 2 hours. Show mommy how you do that. That's it, sweet.
Growing up, I was a happy kid.
Happy birthday, Ashley.
Thank you.
We were really the picture-perfect, all-American family. I was 5 when I knew I wasn't like my family. But it was at my uncle's wedding that I had the first sinking feeling that I wouldn't grow up to be like them. Sometimes I wonder that if I had just ignored how that flower boy made me feel, I could have turned out just like them. Normal.
What do you want to play now? I don't know. Want to play house? How about Ashley and I be the mommies and you boys be our kids and have to do whatever we say? No fair. Well, that's what mommies do. Hey, how about we be the daddies and you do whatever we say? Yeah. No way.
I got an idea. How about David and I play mommy and daddy?
That's really weird.
No, it'll be fun.
That's really disgusting. What, are you some kind of breeder?
No, I'm not.
R2.
Am not.
R2.
Am not.
R2. Come on, David. We don't play with breeders. Telling everyone that you're a disgusting breeder.
I tried really hard just to be normal after that. Hey guys, you did such a great job in the suicide scene today. It made me cry.
Thanks, I thought it went pretty well too.
I wish Julia's part was for a girl.
Ashley likes boys. 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 Ashley Oh, Ashley, you're so beautiful. Kiss me.
Ian, coming?
Ashley, did you tell your mom that you got cast in the school play?
School play? I thought we decided you were trying out for the football team.
I didn't make the team.
What? After all the coaching I paid for?
I'm sorry, Mom, I'm just not coordinated.
But you're coordinated enough to act? Isn't that for boys?
No, it's for girls too. We're doing Romeo and Juliet. I'm playing the nurse.
That's wonderful, isn't it, honey?
Did you know that Shakespeare wrote it for his true love, Duchess of Southampton?
Duchess. Shakespeare was a heterosexual?
Yeah. Well, he loved her so much, but he couldn't divorce his husband. So he wrote Romeo and Juliet to express his love.
Who told you that?
Oh, Mr. Thompson.
Who's he?
The drama teacher.
Need to make a call to that school. And did you see who moved in down the street?
No.
A hetero couple.
How do you know?
I saw them getting out of their car. He put his arm around her, and they have a pink and blue flag on their bumper.
Well, that is really blatant.
Ashley, I want you and Cooper going around the other way to school.
But that's twice as long.
I don't care. I'm not going to have you exposed to that perverted lifestyle, men and women living together. It's a sin. It makes me sick just thinking about it. It's so revolting. Honey, can I get some more bread?
In light of recent events in the Netherlands, where heterosexual marriage is now allowed, Pope Joan VII wants to remind Catholics all over the world that the Church has not changed its stance on this issue. Her Holiness reminds us, and I quote, "It is a sin for a man to lust after a woman. It is an abomination for a woman to lie with a man outside of the breeding season. Any such person harboring lust in their heart for the opposite sex will burn in hell." Let us pray.
Just admit you're a rogue, bro.
What are you doing in the boys' bathroom? Come on, all of you, get back to class. Come on, Paula, get going. Ashley, over here. You know, Ashley, this school has a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of behavior. Imagine if your mothers had seen you holding hands with a boy in public. I should really call both of your parents, but I'll let this be punishment enough.
Thank you, sir.
This is just a phase that you're going through. You'll grow out of it.
Yes, sir.
You know, Ashley, maybe if you got yourself a girlfriend, all this teasing would stop. Now, finish cleaning up and get back to class.
I really did hope that it was just a phase like Mr. Thompson had said. But then I remembered how strong Ian's hand felt, and what the thought of kissing him did to me. And I knew that it wasn't a phase, and I hated myself for it.
Romeo is vanished, all to the world to nothing, that he dares ne'er come back to challenge you. Or if he do, it must be by stealth. I think it best you marry with the county. Oh, he's a lovely gentleman.
I can't do this anymore.
What? But I thought you liked me.
I did. Look, my brother found out. He threatened to tell my parents. They'd kill me if they found out.
No, they wouldn't. They love you.
You don't know my dad's. My Aunt Sarah came out, and the entire family cut her off. We're not even allowed to say her name. Papa says God hates breeders, and they're all gonna burn in hell.
Well, can I kiss you just one last time? Please, I don't know when I'm ever going to get to kiss a boy again.
Get away from me!
Ian.
I don't know why she keeps touching me like this. I was just trying to be nice to her. I hate you, Ashley Curtis. Stay away from me.
That's the problem. You can't be nice to heteros. But you can always teach them a lesson. Grab her!
You can run your little route, but you won't get away. Come on, we're
this is the little queer bait that tried to hold my brother's hand.
He wanted me to.
No, he didn't. You forced him.
We saw her kiss him just now. Didn't we? Yeah.
You friggin' breeder. Grab her!
You queer. Smear the queer! 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 Do us all a favor, Ro. And kill yourself.
Beth, yes, it's Karen. Ashley didn't come home at she's left school.
Why didn't she pick her up?
Ashley, I know, but she hasn't been home since school. And right? Well, that was 2:45. That was 2:45, and it's
Ashley,
over 6 here.
what the hell happened to you?
I'll call you later. Oh my God.
Not again.
Oh, Ashley, baby, sweetie, what
Who
happened?
did this to you?
Look at me.
Ashley, who did this to you?
Nobody.
Well, you didn't do it to yourself now, did you?
That's enough. Honey, please.
Who did this to you? I want to know right now.
Paula, Snyder, Andrew, Santilli.
Oh, Ashley, honey.
All right, then march yourself upstairs. March upstairs and get yourself cleaned up. And you're gonna start karate lessons tomorrow. No, I'm not gonna have my kid get beat up every day.
This is your fault. This is not my fault. You coddle her. I don't coddle her. You would not let me punish her after we found that Health magazine under her mattress. Oh God, Vicky, she was 8 years old. What am I supposed to do? I am not gonna have a breeder growing up in this home. Do you think I want her to be a breeder?
I don't know. This isn't normal. I don't even know what's going on with her.
Kids don't act like this, okay? No, I'm not listening to you anymore because obviously something is going wrong with her. Fine. So maybe we just pack up the house and maybe we just move.
Let's just move.
And the same thing's gonna happen in the next town. And something's wrong with her. I don't understand her. I don't know what's going on with her. She just doesn't act like a normal child.
Back you, breeder! I'm watching you!
It's okay. We're gonna have a sister who's a breeder. Okay, we're gonna move. Fine. Let's move because you know
What if she gets beat up at the next place?
Well, you know what? Cooper's gonna get beat up here. If we stay here, Cooper's gonna get beat up too!
Why does everyone hate me?
Ashley's
Maybe there's a hetero heaven.
Ashley.
Good evening. I hope you enjoyed the presentation of Love Is All You Need. And now it's time for the panel discussion where we explore the film's theme. Joining us this evening are filmmaker Rocco-Shields. We've got Heather Wilk of Zebra Coalition. And Heather, can you tell us a little about Zebra Coalition?
Hi there, sure. Zebra Coalition is an LGBTQ youth organization here in Central Florida. We provide a lot of services for our youth, primarily focusing on mental health counseling and housing.
Thank you. We also have Felipe Sousa-Lazaballet of Hope Community Center. And Felipe, if I didn't get that right, the name right, please correct me. But do you mind if I just go by Felipe from this point on? And can you tell us about Hope Community Center?
Yeah, I know for all of us, we're really long last names and names. Yes, I go by Felipe, I pronounce it he and they. And the Hope Community Center is an organization in Apopka, Florida, about 10 miles away from the city of Orlando, working on immigrant rights. We serve 6,500 people every single year on an array of services. And we also work on community organizing so we can build a better future for us all.
Thank you, Felipe. And last but certainly not least, we have college student Leah Hornik. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Serena, to get things started. So Serena, why don't you go ahead and get things started here?
It is such an honor to share this space with each of you today. And thank you so much, Dr. Earl, for the warm introductions. My name is Serena Ahmed Arroyo. I'm the Education Program Specialist with the One Pulse Foundation. And Rocco, let's dive right in. We'd love to have you kick us off. This is a question really specific to the film. I'm so curious how you created this concept of the flipped world. And as part of this question, do you think your film can be categorized as a dystopic film?
That is a great question. And so, looking at the definition of dystopia, if you were to look it up right now, it is, by definition, an imagined state or society in which there is great suffering or injustice, an imagined state. So that opens up a really interesting conversation here because the film and the themes are not imagined. They are, in essence, exactly what our society goes through. And that's actually why the film works. So this concept of like a gay world or this inversion has actually been done before. But what happened in prior is that it comedic, like we used stereotypes to create comedy, and they used, different themes to really create absurdity. And what happens in that aspect is no one can really resonate with the messages, right? It's just this inversion. And while it will create awareness, there's still this sense of separation between what someone is watching and what someone is perceiving. And so in 2011, going back before that, my mission is to change the world with the power of film, because there is not one other medium that will hold us spellbound and actually allow us to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. And in 2011, I was watching the news and I saw bullying was all over the news at this time, as if a rash of suicides had been broken out because of bullying. And that wasn't the case. It had been happening for a long time. It was just the first time it had been spotlighted. And, I think we're in a society where people will see something on the news and otherize it and say, oh, that's too bad that happened to someone else. And I saw this as an opportunity to really show the world what it would be like to be bullied and marginalized for who you are. Because there was a lack of understanding of how an 11-year-old or how these young kids were actually going to that point. And once you can actually showcase that with this flip, but play it straight, so to speak, that's what the film does and what created an international debate on human rights as a result of this short film going viral.
Thank you so much, Rocco. So inspiring. And I just want to say to all watching today, you are loved and you matter. And I want to open us up to more of a conversation now, and really direct each one of the next questions to each of you, and for all of you to share your stories and your voices, jump in, build off one another. But Felipe, Heather, or Leah, would one of you begin for us? And would you mind not only sharing about yourself and your backgrounds, but answering the question, did you ever feel like you needed to fit in or be someone you are not, just to even be able to survive? And Leah, actually, would you mind starting us off?
Yes, yeah. Hi, Serena. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on this panel. Very honored and privileged to be amongst all these people. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently at Rollins College, a senior right now, studying religious studies right now. So very exciting. And I'm also a Bonner student. So the Bonner program at Rollins actually works really closely with community partners in the area. So I know we work with the Zebra Coalition and Hope Community as well. So I'm very familiar with both of y'all's organizations and very fond of both of them and everything y'all do. And so my community partner actually is with the Holocaust Center. And so I grew up in Orlando. I grew up here, went to Timber Creek High School. I was Jewish, so I went to synagogue here, and it was very far, you know, in Maitland, so I would always have to make the commute. But I never actually went to the Holocaust Center until the Bonner program kind of introduced me to them. And I've been there for 4 years ever since. And so I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And I think it's interesting kind of a take about hiding your identity. I look at it kind of in two ways. So growing up at Timber Creek, right, kind of over there in Orlando, I was one of the only Jewish students actually in high school, in this public high school. And it was really interesting to navigate. Like, I remember certain times being like, no one had ever met a Jewish person until they met me, right? And like having to leave for all the Jewish holidays and like having all my friends going to school and taking tests, or like all the tests being scheduled on Jewish holidays. I mean, all of that was pretty things that I had to deal with, but it was okay. But I do remember some incidences where I just wished, you know, I could go to church with my friends, right? Like they all were like going to their like community, their youth groups and doing this and always inviting me. And, you know, I didn't ever want to go. But one time I did. I went to this church youth group. I just wanted to see what it was about. No one had ever, you know, done this community for me. And I feel like 5 minutes in, it was just not like, what was I doing here? You know, what was I doing here? And the rest of high school, I actually ended up dedicating my life, kind of my high school life, to my Jewish youth group, like USY. And I ended up running for multiple positions and ended up being the secretary of kind of like the state of Florida and our youth group and doing all these great things, and ended up taking a gap year in Israel. And that's where I went to Poland for the first time and my last time. And kind of going there as well with all of my friends and seeing that experience as well opened me up to kind of, you know, how privileged I am to actually be living this life and to not be able to hide that I'm Jewish in this life anymore. And 2016 was actually kind of similar to the time we're thinking of now, but if anyone remembers, 2016, there were lots of like bomb threats going on at the JCCs and to local synagogues. And unfortunately, it's still going on today. And so kind of when I ask myself, what do I want to do in this world? What is my position? It's to be myself, right? It's to be Jewish. It's to be proud. It's to know that people try to tear us down all the time and that we just have to get right back up and to fight. And I think that, you know, taking action and, you know, growing these relationships in our community and just, I don't know, I think that that gives me a lot of hope. And so being here really is just an amazing thing. And so that's a little bit about myself. I don't know if I answered the question or like.
It was perfect, Leah. I really appreciate that you'd share so much with us, you and your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to keep talking, and I'm going to keep
I just want to
please.
say something, Leah. So Hey, I'm a Rollins graduate as well. But it always endearing when someone from Rollins is on the panel, because that's where really I learned my purpose in life.
Right.
And, learned that giving back to society is more important than anything else. So
Yeah.
I always, my heart bleeds when I hear Rollins graduate or student on the panel. So I'll bring it back to Serena.
Thank you, Dr. Earl. Leah, so proud of you. Thank you again. Felipe, sorry to put you on the spot. Would you mind to respond to this question on have you ever felt like you needed to be someone you're not, fit in just to be able to survive? And then please, Heather and Rocco, please, too.
No, thank you. Thank you for the question. And Leah, I thank you so much for sharing your personal story. Really incredible, honestly. I began as an immigrant, right? I came to the United States when I was 14 years old. I came without my parents. My family felt like the only thing they could really do to help me was to send me to live in the United States. And I came, to live with an older sister. So, hard beginnings. I quickly became undocumented. I didn't have papers. I didn't know how to go to college. I struggled through what 11 million other people who are undocumented in the United States face every single year. And at the same time, I figured it out that I like boys. And the intersection of the two made life, quite honestly, quite hard. I think one of the most incredible parts of this film is what I feel like we've been saying all along, that we were born this way, that there's nothing wrong with us, it wasn't a choice. It's not a lifestyle. It's who we are. It's just as important to me or to who I am as the brown eyes I have, right? And it's important to also have a conversation about how that also, when race, ethnicity, religion play an effect on what the life of an LGBTQ plus person in the United States also turns out to be. It is limiting in opportunities, and at the same time, we find community, we find family, we find each other, we find hope for one another, and I found purpose working for social justice organizations. This is where I got started as a young person who felt hopeless, who honestly tried to commit suicide and almost died, and then felt that the only way forward was to find purpose in social change. And the broader question, have I ever had to change who I am or thought I had to? I don't think I could change who I am. Honestly, it's all the time, right? We're code switching back and forth to survive, to get along, to get ahead. And those are survival skills you gathered along the way. And I also know that the most powerful version of myself is when I'm my full authentic self. And I try to bring that into everything I do. That's a little bit about myself, and just like the film. And what impacted me the most was just those moments in which people were saying, this is who I am, I'm just in love, which is the same conversation I've had with my family, with my friends, with my neighbors. And it's a conversation that is still ongoing today.
Felipe, thank you so much. So powerful. And it's so true. We have to pretend to be someone we're not really all the time. And I want to talk about that more in a bit. Our community is so lucky to have you, each of you. I can only imagine everyone listening being empowered by your words in similar or in their own ways. And I think that that's really special. Heather, and then Rocco, please. I'm so excited to learn more about you and hear your response to this question as well.
Thank you so much. Felipe, my friend, every time I hear your story, it's so inspiring every time you tell it. So Thank you so much for sharing. And Lee, it's so nice to meet you. I will say that the film resonated with me. I'm a licensed mental health therapist. I actually got my degree at Rollins. So go Tars, everybody here. I love Rollins. And from that perspective, I was just thinking about my experience growing up and why I ended up going back to school to become a therapist. And a lot of it stems from my experience as a lesbian growing up. And I grew up in Southern Appalachia in a small town. I was raised Southern Baptist. And so I remember very vividly the day around age 10 when I heard the pastor talk about the fact that anyone who was LGBT, and they weren't using that language at the time, it was probably much harsher language, but would be going to hell. Literally, that's what I heard. And I, internalized that and tried to push everything that I was feeling when I got a little bit older, hitting puberty, back down into the closet. And, what I knew instinctively was that I definitely needed to get out of the religion and I needed to take care of myself. I knew that I wanted to eventually help people. But in thinking about my journey, a lot of the kids who I grew up with who later came out as LGBT ended up going through a lot of conversion therapy. And that was sort of the norm in my hometown. Unfortunately, what I know about that is that still exists now and it's legal in most states to practice conversion therapy. So that sort of was a lead in my experience, and watching what the young person in the film went through. I mean, I definitely felt a lot of those same feelings when she's like, I just want to be myself. This is just normal to me. This is how I feel, coming from that angle of just such rawness. And then what it ends up happening, and statistically, this is so true. We know that a young LGBT person is 4 times more likely to attempt to commit suicide than a non-LGBT person. And so it's very realistic. It definitely resonated with me in my journey and where I am now. And I'm so grateful to be able to do this work to help prevent that from happening to the best of my ability anyway. So it's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, Heather. So that we don't hear my voice too much, Rocco, please, will you jump right in? And I'm so excited to learn more about you.
I mean, how much time do we have? This is a very layered, mission-driven project that has crossed over a decade. But, a little about me, my mission as a filmmaker is to, like I said before, harness the power of film and use it to change the way people think and feel. Like, how many people on this talk have binge watched Netflix and actually started to empathize with characters and live those lives as if you're actually living a life with a teacher or with a person in a TV show, right? Everybody here, right? And so imagine using that power and starting to wake people up. And so that is the underlying mission behind everything I do. Looking at Love Is All You Need, this short film, I looked at it as a way to use this concept to wake people up. And, at that point, I was really comfortable with being behind the camera. I had a very traumatic childhood. I didn't speak till I was 5, but I grew up visualizing movies in my head. And I was very shy, but I had, this power of being able to step behind the camera and be able to create these stories, as I did Love Is All You Need, the short film. And what happened with that film was incredible because it really defined me as a person. Because we made the film, we started to festival the film. It started to resonate with people more than I can even say. But we were showing it at festivals, and I was like, how do I get this out to the world? How can more people see this? And I was researching different ways, and teachers had seen this and said this would be a great educational tool to use in classrooms, to bring up talks about bullying, etc. How do I get this? And I'm like, I don't know. And one day I got an email, and then I got 100 emails, and then I got 1,000 emails. And it turns out that short film that we watched got leaked onto the internet, and BuzzFeed had found it and had written up an article, and then every publication started to write about it, and everyone started to watch it. And it was one of the most incredible moments of my life to see this film organically go out into the world, right? And start to wake people up. So I had people writing me, finding me. Like one man was 65 years old, and he contacted me and said, I've always looked at gays as something else. And after I saw your film, I realized that I've been wrong, and I want to thank you for it. I had kids send me videos telling me that they're cutting themselves after seeing the film because they realized they weren't alone. With that great feedback and this life-changing, commentary, there was hatred as well. And several teachers showed that film in their classrooms and got fired for it. And so I all of a sudden found myself in the spotlight of having to become this activist and having to learn how to speak on camera and speak to the world. So I actually have a documentary project where it shows my career over the decade, actually learning how to step in front of the lens and to stand up for those that were being discriminated against. The film is kind of like the never-ending story. It's like we made it, and then all the stuff that happens in there starts to actually happen in real life. And it's became an activation, and it still continues to go viral to this day. And it's been self-translated into 15 different languages and continues to stimulate these debates. And I have the opportunity to talk to people like you and really push the message of the film and create awareness. And we were also able to create a feature version of the film, which has the potential to do even more.
I'm so excited to also hear about all the next steps and to watch the feature-length film. Thank you all. I really believe in this power of this type of honest connection that comes out of these sorts of conversations, and how crucial this process of sharing is to creating safer communities for all people and for vulnerable populations in particular. And I loved how you spoke to, and this is your work, but how the power of media and movies to create empathy. I'm a social worker, and one of my idols is Brene Brown, who talks about films as these empathy building machines. I'm sure I got that quote wrong, but I just really relate to everything you were speaking to, and so powerful. And I know I spoke to some of this in you all sharing more about your backgrounds and answering this question of fitting in, not only just because, but to survive. But I think it's really important to hear more from anyone who wants to jump in first on the dangers of putting people into a box, so to speak, where we feel like we can't be our authentic self, where we feel like we can't be our authentic selves. And I'd love to have you all weigh in. And if there's anyone that feels compelled to begin first, I'd love for that. Maybe Rocco, please. Thanks.
Yeah, Heather, you spoke about, religion and, how you've had to overcome, some of the doctrines presented as you grew up. And I think, one of my missions, and we were able to do it and explore it, we only touched it on the short film, but in the feature film, we go really into it, is that, a lot of hate is justified by the Bible or doctrine or, these kind of beliefs, right? These ancient belief sets. And what that does is it makes people feel justified for the actions that they take. And the more we can, wake people up and allow them to not put people in the boxes of those hate, right? The more we could create change. And so that's really, I think, important to really think about, is how can we look at something and not judge someone by the color of their skin, by who they are, right? It's about taking away these ancient rhetoric and these ancient beliefs and really looking at someone as a human.
Yeah, I'll chime in. And I think that that's what the film does so well, is it flips the narrative, in such a way that it really makes you think. Even as an LGBT person, I was thinking, wow, what a world, like that it blew my mind. And another thing to point out is that coming out is a continuous process. And so when we make those assumptions, you know, whether you're LGBT or non-LGBT, you make assumptions about what other people's lifestyle may be, whether that, you know, is about gender identity or sexual orientation or really anything, you know, your educational background, your geographical background, all of those things, when you make those assumptions. But when you're LGBT, you're coming out on a daily basis. There's not one moment where we just start making this announcement like, hey, I'm out, and that's it, we're done, right? It's when you go into the bank, it's when you're at the grocery store, it's when, you know, it's really every little daily experience. And so I think for us to really understand that we can't make assumptions about people, you know, and how damaging that is in every little thing that we do every day.
And then, yeah, I just wanted to add to both of that. Something really interesting is that most Holocaust survivors that I meet and I work with, you know, I always ask them, what's your message to young people? What's your message to students, the next generation? And they always will say, you know, tolerance, acceptance. You know, that's the simple message behind most Holocaust survivors' stories, is just to accept others for what they were, because had others accepted them a long time ago, you know, would these atrocities have happened? And again, working at the museum, I listened from so many scholars, and I heard from Michael Berenbaum this summer, who reminded me, and we all know this, but the Holocaust was legal. And it's always like, every time I hear that, it gets me. And especially, you know, maybe living in the state, especially too, it's so scary, but it's just really putting others right in that box and making sure that it never gets to this point. And so I also wanted to share a quick story as well, but I've been working with a Holocaust survivor really closely, and her story is actually that her and her siblings survived because they hid their identity, and they grew up as Catholics and Christians. They separated, and she just knew. She was so young. She was about 6 and her brother was probably about 2. And so they just grew up knowing that they could never tell anyone they were Jewish. And that's all they learned. And when the war was over and they were a little older, but still, you know, young, like around 10 or 12, and their older brother found them to try to get them to come back, they had really believed that they were Christian. They had completely forgot their Jewish identity. And, you know, thankfully they found it back, and their faith and all of that. But it's crazy to think that, you know, all of that started, you know, legally. It was all allowed, right, to hate another group. And so it's really important to not let the hate get that far, I think. So
Thank you all so much. Oh, Felipe, please.
No, it's okay. Well, ditto to everything that's been said. I do remember actually something that I did with Dr. Earl that speaks to not putting myself on a box, right? He invited me to come and speak and talk about LGBTQ plus inclusion in faith communities with a group of faith leaders. Well, so that same evening, Heather and I actually were going to drag as a fundraiser for local LGBTQ plus organizations. So I showed up to this meeting wearing huge acrylic nails, huge, right? And on my way, as I'm driving, right, I'm thinking, man, what should I do? I have these on, I have this thing tonight, right? And I decided to double down on who I am. It was a conscious decision to say, okay, this is it. You know, there is nothing wrong with me dragging. There is nothing wrong with my nails. I'm here with content that I think will help them continue their conversation. I've earned my place. And that mentality, that mindset, right, helped me actually come in and share from a place of power, not from a place of weakness, from a place of me being my full self, right? But the truth is, right, that finding the moments and the amount of strength that it takes to come out every single time, like Heather said, my wedding ring is the constant coming out story for me. You know, I'm at the bank, people see a ring, they ask for my wife, and I'm like, well, you know, I'm married. to a man. And in the constant moments in which we have to feel otherwise by one or the other, right? Some of it is in our own minds, in which we have to liberate ourselves. Well, that was the moment that I was going to that meeting, and I decided to double down on what I had to say instead of run away from who I was, right? So that's the inner work that I have to do every day. And by showing up as our full selves, we create space for others to do too, right? So, and Leah, when you were talking about Holocaust survivors, right? They create the space for us to exist. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be having this conversation to begin with. And they've paid the ultimate price, really, you know, so this very room can happen. Yeah, those are kind of like the things that came to mind when I was thinking about the checking of boxes and how freeing it is to burst out of it, you know, every time you can.
Thank you so much. The bravery and the strength to be yourself. I mean, you said so many things so beautifully. And the more brave we are, the more we set a precedent and give others that empowerment. That might be not only fearful to be who they are, but feeling that it's very dangerous for them, and feeling like they might harm themselves otherwise. And the support we need to be ourselves. We need our colleagues and friends' support in our minds when we think we shouldn't show a part of who we are just because we're afraid someone won't accept us or won't look at us with as much respect. And I think this is a good segue into my next question, which is, what would you tell your younger selves in navigating society's expectations that might not be accepting of who you are? And Heather or Leah, would you mind starting us off?
The first thing that came to my mind when you said that was the It Gets Better project. If you haven't heard of that project, it was a great campaign that started probably now, gosh, it's been several years. And, you know, it is simple. It's a simple message. It gets better. But I do think that it's important to teach young people that not only does it get better, but you do need support sometimes, right? It's important to rely on the strength of the adults who have gone through some of the similar things that you may have gone through. You know, make sure that you have a trusted adult in your life. I do believe that with that, and actually data shows that with that, just one support person in a young person's life can help change their entire trajectory of their life. So, you know, it's up to us as adults to be those role models. So, yeah, that's sort of something I was thinking about.
I just want to come in what Heather was saying. All right, so go back to your young mind, right? If someone says it gets better, that's like nothingness, right? Because it needs more than just that statement to work. And I look back at Rocco's film, and no matter what you told that young girl, it gets better. Their young minds are not seeing that. So It Gets Better is a wonderful campaign because they kind of triangulate that, right? It's more than just the phrase, but you've got to move action toward. It's like, what is Just Say No? Well, it never really worked, right? Because just saying no is just a statement, a word, right? And we learned that it didn't work. But I just caution, I shouldn't say caution, but just wanted to highlight that from the young mind. It's rough. Thinking that they have that fortitude to, you know, to act on that. Back to you, Serena.
Dr. Earl. Thank you. And jumping on to that too, asking the question both, what would you tell your younger selves? But also maybe what's helpful also is thinking about how does one navigate these expectations? Whether you're young or you're older, how do we navigate this world with so many different sectors, with so many different types of people, from family to peers to our teachers to our supervisors, our colleagues, our larger community, our neighborhood, Do you all have any advice that you might want to leave here today on how we navigate the complexities of today and being ourselves and being our authentic selves?
Yes, I think I'll say, and also to my younger self, I think this is an answer to all of it, but don't be afraid to use your voice. And I feel like that could be almost in two ways. Like, don't be afraid to use your voice to fight for what's right, you know, and to be an activist and to, you know, speak up for others, but as well, I think to speak to each other. So we're not just yelling at one another, but to actually speak to one another and to hear one another and to try and create change, I feel like is a really something that we're kind of missing maybe today, is we're not really listening or hearing each other. And I think that that's an important message for everyone.
And that really ties to what you all were saying about not making assumptions, trying not to rush to judgment. Maybe if we stopped and listened and didn't rush to have thoughts and vocalize them right away, that would be a really great first step to connecting further together and allowing that space for people to really be themselves, and whatever that means for them, and how important that is for not only that person and their health and their well-being, which should be important enough, but for society as a whole. And I'd love if anyone wants to jump in more to this question. I believe I have like 2 or 3 more questions left, and I know time is always limited.
I have one just quick response to that, and there's this one quote I love, and you know, everyone wants change. Everyone wonders why the world isn't changing fast enough. But if every single person did one thing to change it, the entire world would think differently. And I think the person that you are, or that anyone is so much more than the trauma that we've experienced. And we have the ability to live our one life that we have been given. And we can either leave our footprints in the sand, so to speak, or let them be washed away by the ocean. And I think that if everyone really can take what they've learned and grown from, as terrible and as some of it has been, and figure out how you could use that as motivation to change others, we can really, really step outside the box and really change things and society.
That's beautiful, Rocco. So beautiful. I remember when I was 5 years old, I still lived in Brazil. And like every other boy, I was given a ball and said, go play soccer. So I did. Then I came back and I thought to myself, I'm not like the other boys. That moment when I was 5 years old, I knew who I was. I didn't have vocabulary. I didn't have support, but I knew who I was. And then a few years later, I found myself in the United States without knowing English, living as an immigrant. And again, you know, I had made a huge journey so I could be myself in a new place, in a new land, live a new paradigm, dream bigger dreams, dream the dreams that I never dared to dream before. I think that's what a life's journey really is all about. So if I could speak to a younger version of myself, I would tell that boy that there is nothing wrong with you. And yes, you're different, and that's great. And then fast forward to the moments in which I have felt very low, like Arl said, overwhelmed, and quite honestly, not knowing if I should stay alive or not. I found strength in community. I found strength by finding other people, other organizations that took me in as my full self. So here, Hope, whenever you come, everyone is invited, by the way. There are huge words that is be-longing, because we say that at Hope, everyone can be their full authentic selves. And all of us are longing for community, for change. And then when we get together, we can create powerful communities that we get to be and we get to long for what we need in this world.
I just want to echo on what Felipe is saying. So the key here is to create these safe spaces, right? Safe spaces, and then hopefully that they can expand through, you know, people see these models, and then we have more models for safe spaces, because it's really hard for a child, I believe, to want to verbalize, express how they feel if it's not a safe space, right? But how many safe spaces are there really for these kids, right? They just seem far and few in between for them to be liberated in the manner that they need to be liberated. I thank Heather and Felipe because they do a wonderful job of creating these spaces. And Rocco, your film, for acknowledging that they need to be that they need to be, proliferated. But it's so hard for a child to understand it's okay when remember, it's all about being accepted, feeling like you belong. When everything around you is telling you don't, right? And you don't have that space for people to hear you, then it becomes a little daunting. Serena, I'll bring it back to you.
Oh, thank you so much. No, and I really want to make sure to ask this question, Rocco. Was speaking on our love for the youth and empowering our young people, was this choice of casting important to you, where the lead actor was not only a young person, but also a young girl? Was this important to you as far as casting? And I'd love for everyone to jump in on anything that Rocco responds to.
Wow, I am really impressed that you picked up on this. So the story of Ashley is actually the story of my co-writer, David Tillman. And the things that you've seen in the film happened to him. And on our first draft, when we went to go write the film, we first made this whole spreadsheet, like what would be the same, what would be different, and how much would it otherize, right? Because if the world was inverted, there would be things that would be different, right? We believe, sports would be equal and whatnot, but that's a whole nother interview. But the first draft of what you saw was a young boy named Cooper. And we realized, I woke up with this epiphany that society is very quick to otherize violence and say, oh, that happened to someone else. And, especially against boys are supposed to toughen up and suck it up and go out there and I realized if we told this inversion, it wouldn't be as powerful unless we took the girl next door and showed violence against the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, little innocent girl that no one could say she deserved that. And that's part of the impact of the film that casting of that character was incredibly important, because no one can look at Ashley and not see somebody that they know. And that's what created tremendous impact.
Thank you so much. Left speechless, and also sad, thinking about how our society reacts and doesn't react to, certain folks on the screen, and how you have to think about that in casting and how that affects your storylines and plots. And
we also that is the true story of David Tillman and what happened to him. I mean, some kids chased him down an alley and wrote faggot on his forehead in Sharpie, and he had to go home to his dad, who then beat him up. We couldn't put that in this film because that just is crazy with the inversion. So you really think about what kids go through and have gone through, and it's very severe. This was like an ice skate, but it's much, it could go much deeper. So
thank you, Rocco. Does anyone have any?
This was really healing for him. Oh, sorry to interrupt. This was a very healing experience for him. He thinks that he went through that trauma in order to bring his story to the masses and create the change we did.
Wow. And it speaks to what you were speaking about before, about how we're so much more than our trauma, but it's hard to wrestle with those two statements. We're so much more than our trauma, but that's, of course, an integral part of who we are in our stories. And thereby resilience has to be a part of our being, our very existence, and what that means. And I think as this being a conversation starter, we just so beautifully opened up so many thoughts that are so important to investigate further. And I just really appreciate you all. And I would love if anyone has any more thoughts on this question, if it means any more to you, if you want to speak to anything, But otherwise, I'll jump into the next question. I'll just take a moment and leave it open for a moment.
I think that Rocco mentioned something interesting about parents, right? And that was articulated even in the film, right? So you had one parent that was just, adamantly just, we can't have this in the family, right? But then it gives you pause for thought, right? So that's explicit. What about the parent that is implicitly non-supportive, right? So that's a whole different thing. They might say, okay, yeah, my son or my daughter, but their actions that speak louder than the words, right? Whether they know or not. What are those kind of consequences for the child that's going through what the young lady experienced? So even though they might show support verbally, but it's the implicit. Remember, those implicits are done on the people through social learning, right? So the parent can't even really control that. So I just think that's another area that's interesting that I don't think gets a lot of attention to. And I'll flip it back to you, Selena.
I have just a quick thing to say here. I think like a lot of parents, no matter how much they love their kids, they will by default put their kids in a box because they have this illusion of how they wanted their life to be, right? And that's the start of it. And so you see even in the film that mother, as kind or whatnot, trying to put her kid in a box. And I think that goes back to the question we were talking about earlier and kind of why this happens. And it's about us all looking inward and not chasing this illusion of what others want, but truly moving forward with our own lives because we're the ones living it.
We put people into a box because it makes us feel comfortable.
Exactly. And it's, about time we start to release. I learned a lot about Buddhism recently, and it's a very, very beautiful look. And it's a lot of, it's about chasing the illusion and disbanding what we think the illusion should be or how we think our life should have gone or what should have been different, and actually embracing the energy and the future forward of what we can actually become.
Thank you so much. And it's thereby creating safe spaces, also brave spaces. Felipe, did you have, please? Thank you so much. I thought I saw you come off mute.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think Rocco is talking about some of the unconscious biases that we naturally have because of the ways that society taught us to be and whose lives matter, who doesn't, and why. That even in a moment in which we're trying to portray a message that shows that all of us matter, in that moment, she had to be strategic about whose lives matter in the United States and across the world, and who could be the best messenger for that message in that moment, right? As I was listening to you, Rocco, I kept thinking, oh my goodness, we have so much work to do. Because, in an ideal world, it didn't matter if it was a boy or girl, white, black, etc., that we would empathize equally to the experience of a human being. And that's just not the way it works. It's just not how it is. We know that even in medical practices, women endure more pain because there is this belief that women can endure more pain, right? That they don't have pain, as if women are not human. And there is less research about medical issues impacting Black folks, and because of that, Black folks die. I mean, so on and so forth. We can look at it in every aspect of society. And it just comes back, it comes back, and it comes back, and it comes back. And even though we are trying to live in a world that we don't other others, it's important to remember that we are othered, even in the way the message that we're trying to portray. That was very profound to me, Rocco.
Thank you. I think it's really interesting to recognize, if really, and I know this may be a little bit of shocking to say, is we are all, I do a lot, my whole career is actually educating mental health professionals how to better work with patients and diagnosis. And part of that is a reflexive exercise on implicit bias. We are all biased, whether we want to admit it or not, because of what we have gone through, because that shapes our formulative view of how we view the world. So it's really about trying to figure out how we can rock and roll out of that bias and really start to look at scenarios and situations in a way where we're not inherently making judgment based on how someone looks or what they've gone through, or how they're speaking or whatnot.
Thank you all so much for your energy and your insight and your thoughts. They're so important. And I really want to make sure to ask this question. Rocco, I was watching an interview of you, and you talked about this moment where you were with the pastor of the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, where 9 African Americans in 2015 were in the midst of prayer and targeted at their place of worship and murdered by a white supremacist. The pastor spoke to you about your film and how it applies across all types of discrimination faced by, and not only discrimination faced by LGBT plus community. I found this moment so inspiring. I'd love to hear you speak more about how you made this connection with the pastor. But most of all, how did you feel in hearing them speak to your film in this way? And I know we're short on time, but just really want to make sure everyone jumps in to build off of anything that you feel empowered to speak to after Rocco responds, and perhaps ending on advice on building community and solidarity between diverse communities. Thank you so much.
This is really important to speak about, and actually such an honor that I'm here to be able to speak to all of you here today, because I spoke of this feature film that we made, and we did that and released it because of the Pulse shootings. It's a very, very major, significant event of what happened here, but Reverend Betty Diaz-Clark was the pastor of the Emmanuel Church, as you said. And when the Pulse shooting happened, she immediately left her station at the Mother Emmanuel Church, saw this as another thing that she knew and could go and help the survivors, and actually came down to the site for all the survivors and started to talk to the family and the survivors and preach the word. And really she saw this as like, I was put through the Mother Emmanuel shootings so that I could properly minister to the victims of the Pulse shooting and their families and the people there. And when she returned to her church, she was promptly fired because of her of her willingness to actually endorse the gay lifestyle. And she saw Love Is All You Need shortly thereafter and saw it as the feature film version, as a message that she wanted to push, because the feature film really goes into the Bible and kind of how it's used to justify hate, but also it speaks to the victims of those that have been affected or been the victims of hate crimes. It actually has the stories of Tyler Clemente, Ryan White, and others. And we partnered with 29 nonprofits after Pulse and went into the world and actually showcased the film publicly to create an international and national dialogue in the wake of the election time, which was 2016, to release the film and really do some good in the world. And so it did do some good in the world. So thank you for that. And thank you for inspiring us to take that feature film and do some really good in the world and change some lives.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here with us. I think that these moments of solidarity and intersectionality are not only inspiring, but so important when we think about the future steps forward. And I know that we are out of time, but I feel so lucky that we had this chance to be together today with this incredibly thoughtful session. Dr. Earl, I would now love to pass the mic, so to speak, to you to close us out today. Dr. Earl, you're on mute.
Thank you, Serena. And thank you. I really sincerely want to thank the panel for tonight's amazing discussion. right? But before we close, I'd like to share a thought, right? So I've been collecting notes here on the conversation, and there are a couple key things that came to mind. Felipe mentioned code switching to survive. That's a survival skill, right? LGBTQ is more, Heather mentioned LGBTQ is more likely to commit suicide. They LGBTQ exponentially more than any communities in the United States, the world for that matter, right? Putting people in a box, categorizing people, right? And Serena mentioned dystopia at the beginning. Asked Rocco for her thoughts on dystopia. Well, you know, all these things to me it smells of dystopia. When we're living in a society where survival skills, code switching, categorizing people, and increased suicide. So I just wanted to leave with that thought. And think about that, please. This is Dr. Earl, and on behalf of the entire One Pulse Foundation team, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. And we'll see you at the next conversation starter. Good evening, God bless, and good night. Wow, great film, Rocco. Thank you for presenting that to the country, the world. It's just really, you know, I watched it and I was so touched by it, and I knew that this was a work of art that can inspire change, right? And I think that's probably what the purpose is. But I'd like to know, right? Was there anything interesting that happened during the filming of this? You know, that little tidbit of something that the audience might find interesting.
You know, yes, so many things have happened during the filming of this project, but the one of note that I do want to bring up is, you notice there's a lot of children in the film, and the storyline created a lot of discussion, just natural questions from those kids that hadn't really seen, you know, this thing or never really understood that gay was something else. You know, the age range was like, I had 18 months old all the way up to, you know, 13. But the questions that they would ask me of like, does this really happen? Like, why would they do that? Like, why? And just like these natural kind of like, from the eyes of a child, can we see someone without prejudice? And that is one of the most beautiful parts, is working with those children to tell this story.
So thank you for that, Rocco, because you know what? Whenever we talk about these things, it's always from the minds of the adult, right? But now we're seeing it expressed from kids. It brings us back to that childhood, right? That we all experience, how tough childhood is. And you magnificently just portrayed all that, captured that in a way that kind of escapes us sometimes as we become adults and tackle these difficult subjects and topics. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.